Good evening, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, as well as the FanSided Network and FinFanatic.com. We are just about 22 hours away from the Dolphins kickoff with the Bengals and their attempt to go 4-0, which is, I kept saying from the beginning of the offseason, we kept saying the Dolphins need to be 2-2 after 4 games. Well, they've won 3 games already. So they're already there. And the Bengals are 3.5-point favorites, which is a little bit bizarre given the short week, but they are defending AFC champions. But when you look at the injury report, Paul, right now, as we head into Thursday night, 4 players for the Dolphins questionable: Tua, Xavier Howard, Teron Armstead, Jalen Waddle. And you've also got 2 players who are out, who are backup tight ends, Ethan Carter and Hunter Long. So not big injury problems for the Dolphins unless one of those 4 starters are going to be out.
Yeah, no. And I mean, one of the things we didn't even get to talk about is the fact that we are one of the last 2 3-0 teams in the NFL right now. Let's go. And good Lord.
Yes.
The thing I want to touch on before even that is, because this is something we haven't gotten to enjoy as Dolphins fans in my memory. I put a tweet out from our Twitter handle this week. The Dolphins power rankings across all the major media outlets. Yahoo Sports, 4th. USA Today, 2nd. Fox News, 2nd. NBC Sports, 2nd. ESPN, 1st. NFL.com, 3rd. Sporting News, 1st. CBS Sports, 2nd. I don't recall ever seeing this before, and it's pretty freaking good feeling, especially for a team that, a lot of teams are writing off in the offseason.
And to piggyback on that, if the Dolphins win this game and go to 4-0, it can't be forgotten that this team feasts on bad quarterbacks. And you look at the next 9 weeks heading into the future here. If the Dolphins go to 4-0, or if let's say they go 4-0 here against the Bengals, next week they have Zach Wilson for the Jets. Then after that, they have Kirk Cousins for the Vikings at home. That's by far the best quarterback they're going to face. Then Mitch Trubisky on Sunday Night Football at home. Then Jared Goff, Justin Fields, bye week, Jacoby Brissett, Davis Mills, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are the next quarterbacks they're going to face. So if you're talking a 4-0 start, you're talking about something magical happening here over the next really 2 months.
Speaking of magical, I'm glad you brought up Jimmy Garoppolo, because one of my favorite things I've seen this week was he was literally caught on video talking into his headset, saying the words, "All your plays suck." So I wonder what changed as far as playing scheme design, because everyone wants to credit the Shanahan system for Mike McDaniel, but maybe Mike McDaniel deserves a little bit of credit for the system that they were running out there in San Francisco.
Yeah, and even at his best, Jimmy Garoppolo should not have stepped out the back of the end zone while throwing a pick six. That would have been.
Dan Orlovsky thanks him profusely for stepping out of the back of the end zone, so he doesn't live on in as much infamy now after watching somebody else do that.
Absolutely. So looking here at this game, Paul, before we get to that game, River Craycraft promoted to the 53-man roster officially. He's soaked up his 3 activations from the practice squad, and he's going to be on the 53-man roster. And it's starting to become like that better version of Isaiah Ford from the last couple of years, where it's just like that guy that just gets open that Tua finds week in and week out.
Instead of Isaiah Ford, I would actually use the Mac Hollins comparison a little bit. Because it's Mac Hollins was one of those guys that was just supposed to kind of be there, do some special teams aspects, and it never failed. And shout out to Mac Hollins for having a huge game last week for the Raiders, but it never failed. He would get open or catch a deep ball, whether it was from Tua or with Fitzpatrick. Had just those miraculous catches in clutch moments, which seems to be something we're getting out of Craycraft. So I'm very happy for him, especially for a guy that's been promoted and demoted from practice squads. I believe it's like 15 times in his career.
Matt Collins, after 3 games, has more receiving yards than Devontae Adams. Crazy. So, Paul, let's get to the game here. It's going to be Tua Tagovailoa against former Dolphins defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, who's done a fantastic job here with the Bengals. And Tua is going up against a great defense. But you're also talking about in Tua, a quarterback statistically, number 1 in QBR from ESPN. He's in the top 4 in so many statistical categories. Quarterback rating, passing yards. I mean, this is a big game for him going up against his, a former Dolphins defensive coordinator. If Tua comes out in this game and goes let's say 25 for 35 for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a winning effort to put the Dolphins at 4-0, we are officially talking at that point at an MVP candidate.
We are, and let's be a little bit realistic here as well, and not about that, but the Bengals allowed 285 yards to Joe Flacco on 28 completions. They allowed Mitch Trubisky to throw for 200 yards against them. I mean, they allowed Cooper Rush to come in and go 19 of 31 for 235 yards. And none of them are Tua, and none of them have the weapons that Tua does at his disposal. And none of them have Mike McDaniel scheming and playing up the offense. So those factors alone make me look at this and go, well, you'll hear that haven't played anybody yet argument as far as that goes. I'm not a big, oh my God, Cooper Rush guy. You definitely know I'm not a big, oh my God, it's Mitch Trubisky or Joe Flacco guy. And Tua is far and away playing better than any of those guys. And you want to take a comparison here. The Bengals are 1-2 right now, facing some mediocre, middling, struggling teams. The Dolphins have come out, beat the Patriots, check. Beat the Ravens in a massive come from behind, exciting victory, check. Beat the freaking Bills, the sweetheart of the NFL. And people can make any excuse they want to, but at the end of the day, they got the job done against the team that everybody perceives as the best in the NFL, against a team that was the favorite to challenge them, against the team that was the favorite in the AFC North. And you start looking around, the Dolphins are walking around beating up the champs, and they're the last man standing. So yes, the Bengals are the defending champ, but Burrow's been sacked 15 times on the season.
Yeah, it has. And we'll get to that in a second here. Is if the Dolphins win this game and get to 4-0, you're talking about them taking down the Patriots in week 1, which doesn't seem like a big deal right now at home. Week 2, coming back against the Ravens at Baltimore with how Lamar Jackson played, very big deal. Last week against the Bills, very big deal. If they take down the Bengals here at Cincinnati in prime time and then go into the weak part of their schedule, I mean, I get to a point where I'm saying I don't like to look ahead. Well, no, I take that back. I love to look ahead. I love to look ahead because I don't play for the Dolphins. And you take a look at those 8 quarterbacks that I said before, and I don't see a way you don't get to 10-2.
I do. It's called getting to better than that.
You thinking 50 years ago, maybe?
There's no reason based on what's coming up. And it's a long season with injuries and things like that. But there's no reason that if Miami steamrolls the Bengals here, like they potentially could, there's no reason to think that they're going to falter against one of the other teams on that list that you provided. They could very easily be a team at that point in time that gets to that 11-1 or better.
I think they have to get kicked in the nuts one time at least.
Well, they did
But-
for for like 2.5 quarters against the Ravens.
Yep. And it might be this game too, but I mean, I can't understate it enough that the opponents that you're facing in the upcoming weeks are the Jets, the Vikings, the Steelers on Monday night, or excuse me, Sunday night, Texans, Bears, Lions. I mean, they are not the opponents. This is the tough part of our schedule here. And this is the back end. This is the last game of the tough part of the Dolphins schedule that they're facing here right now. And that's the exciting part. And that's what every Dolphins fan should be more alive than they've been in the last 25 years. And I think they are. I love it. I love every minute of it. So let's get to the actual game here, Paul. Tua,
The one thing I want to point out as well, based on these first 4 games and what a lot of people aren't talking about right now, is when it comes time for the playoffs, the Dolphins are going to own, if Miami can knock off the Bengals tomorrow, they're going to own the head-to-head against the Bengals and the Ravens, as far as like if it's a wild card spot, if they bring things to a draw with New England for the season, they're already starting to take care of common opponents and have the better record against common opponents. Like these first 4 weeks are not just important as far as being first in the AFC East right now. These first 4 weeks are ridiculously important for a team that's gone to double-digit wins the past 2 years, as far as playoff tiebreaker scenarios go. So there's
Absolutely.
a lot to like with this. There's a lot for seeding. So if they win the East, as far as the seeding goes, they'll own the head-to-head against Baltimore and the Bengals. If they go to 4-0 here, like there's a lot of impact from these 4 games in particular.
Yeah, the Ravens and the Bengals are the two that I eye the most with what you just said, because yeah, those are the teams I see as most dangerous because they have the most dangerous quarterbacks. And that dangerous quarterback is Joe Burrow. And yeah, it was a tough first 2 weeks. And then last week against the Jets, the Bengals came back. They won 27-12. And I watched that game a couple of times, and it wasn't a fluke. I mean, they have one of the best wide receiver trios in the NFL with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. And this is a game that honestly, I wish Byron Jones were back one game early for, but it's also a really big matchup for Kader Kohou because Xavier Howard's going to play, even though he's got the groin injury. Nick Needham is going to be there in the slot, and Kader Kohou has been that surprise. Kader Kohou is going to be matched up.
Let you be surprised about that.
Not
I, sir.
But Kohou is going to be matched up against T. Higgins or Jamar Chase in this game repeatedly, and he needs to be up to the challenge. And that's one of the biggest challenges and matchups of this game for the Dolphins.
It is. That's one of them. But at the same time, Javon Holland has been playing at an all-pro veteran level here in his second season with the help over the top. And you've got Wiley veteran and Eric Rowe that can help out over the top in those scenarios. You've got a defensive coordinator that can scheme up pressures and scheme up coverage. And we've seen Burrow struggle at times this year. It wears on you getting hit that frequently, that often, as Burrow does get hit. And to have a team that can dial up pressures like the Dolphins can, as far as that goes, is going to be tremendously frustrating for the Cincinnati Bengals team. We've seen the Bengals this season do what we ran into as Dolphin fans for a while, which was every offseason supposedly, oh, we're gonna fix that line for you guys. We promise. We got this. And through 3 weeks of the season and 15 sacks, and that's not even counting quarterback hits, pressures, and hurries. I think at this point we can declare it a resounding hell no, you didn't fix it, Cincinnati. Yeah, it feels worse now. I mean, 15 sacks through 3 games for this Bengals team against, the Jets. The Cowboys do have some good pass rushers, but at the same time, they're not dialing up anything tricky to get to you. They're basically saying these guys are coming, stop them. And
I'll say this, that the Bengals, have let up 15 sacks this year, and they've been overall terrible. What's interesting is that they signed Ted Karras at center, Alex Kapp at right guard, and La'el Collins at right tackle. On paper, those players should be doing well, but they're not. And now they go up at the offensive tackle position. Jonah Williams and an injured La'el Collins, even if he plays, Dolphins dodged a bullet there. You've got Jalen Phillips and Emmanuel Ogbah going up against them. That's going to be one fascinating matchup, with Jonah Williams against Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips, 6'5", 265, has that long reach and is kind of young, really hungering for a breakout game against the short arm Jonah Williams. And on the other side, Emmanuel Ogbah was a monster in this past game, and also late in the week got credited for a field goal block against Tyler Bass. He's going up against an injured La'el Collins, who the Dolphins were happy to have signed. So that is promising for the Dolphins pass rush, and they have to get to Joe Burrow in this game.
They do. And the Bengals have been abysmal on third down throughout the season. I think they're 2 for 5 on the season on fourth downs. They're not a team that's doing a good job of getting off the field. And I apologize, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I know the Dolphins have done very well on third down this season. There's so many highlights and big plays that Miami has made on third down. Just as an example, the 3rd and 22 this past week that really took Miami back into it when Tua hit Jalen Waddle for a 45-yard completion.
And there's really not enough data at this point, 3 games in, to judge one way or the other with third down data.
Well, 47 third down attempts with only 21 conversions. While there's not a lot of data, if you're less than 50% when you're at almost 50 attempts on third down, there's a trend there.
Maybe a little bit, but then on the other side of the coin, Josh Allen, 11 for 18 against the Dolphins defense last week on third down. Yeah, I mean, and Lamar Jackson really good on third down too, but good.
But with those third down conversions, Josh Allen and the Bills, one thing that they did tremendously well last week was control the clock in that game and control that time of possession and keep marching down the field and things like that. And Miami was able to, in literally half the time of possession, do what they needed to do to score the points that they needed to do. If the Bengals are going to struggle to stay on the field on third downs, that's only going to benefit Miami here.
Yeah. Running game, Joe Mixon, 2.8 yards per carry this year on the season, has been struggling and hampered by an ankle injury. And his backup is Samaje Perine, who was with the Dolphins back in that late 2019 season for a cup of coffee. So yeah, it's overall, when I look at it, the Dolphins have to create pressure with their front four, because if they don't, they either have to get creative like they did last week with sending the blitz, sending a 5th guy, or they've got to get that pressure with that front four. I think the Dolphins are going to have success at defensive end against Jonah Williams and against Lael Collins or his backup.
I think they will as well. I think, and whether Miami has to or not, Miami loves to blitz from random places. They love to blitz their safeties. We saw it on the Javon Holland fumble force last week. Joe Burrow has spent a tremendous amount of time on his back, and really, I think this is a matchup where everything I look at, even with the injuries, just favors the Dolphins here as far as pass rush, as far as Joe Mixon not being able to get going yet. 2.8 yards per carry is contributing to their amount of third down conversions that they have to attempt. And just to give you an example, Miami's got almost as many third down conversions as the Bengals do, and that's on like 13 or 14 less attempts. So it's, percent, and Miami literally is 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions, where the Bengals are 2 of 5. It's a small data set, but it's enough to start a trend here.
Yeah, it possibly could be. And the big overall thing is that it is Tua against Joe Burrow in this game. If the Dolphins get to 4-0, and you're talking about Joe Burrow at 1-3, and Justin Herbert with a torn rib cartilage at 1-2, and maybe 1-3 after this weekend. Well, they probably won't lose to the Texans, but let's say they do. That conversation may start to shift, especially if Tua has a big game here on Thursday before those other players play on Sunday, or excuse me, before Herbert plays on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's the funniest thing too is right now the Dolphins, well, the Bengals are this high-powered offense with great receiving core and Joe Mixon, you name it. Miami has as many touchdowns by themselves as both the Bengals and their opponents do combined at this point in the season.
Did not know that.
Miami's got 10 touchdowns on the season. The Bengals have 6 touchdowns and they've allowed 4. It's again, we're talking about small data sets here, but we're almost a quarter of the way through the season. That's when we can start looking at some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have not scored a rushing touchdown yet this year. They've not scored a defensive touchdown yet this year, and Miami has scored from all over the field with so many different ways and ways to beat you.
Trey Hendrickson was defensive player of the week last week with 2.5 sacks against George Fant, the Jets left tackle, who's been a complete train wreck this entire year. Jalen Phillips, he's got to break out, if not for this game here against the Bengals. He's got to really get 2 sacks against George Fant the following week. But Teron Armstead, a left tackle, going up against Trey Hendrickson. That is a matchup that is way more even than what Hendrickson has faced over the first 2 weeks. Week 1, he faced Dan Moore, the left tackle from the Steelers. Week 2 on Blanken, but week 3 he faced George Fant, and he's a fantastic player. And last year he had 13.5 sacks, but he goes up against Teron Armstead, and that is a different type of challenge.
Yeah, Teron Armstead is one of the premier, if not the premier, left tackles in football right now. And it's kind of funny. You reminded me of something else I wanted to bring up, and it's just something that we've talked about in the past, even though it doesn't affect the Dolphins and it doesn't affect the Bengals here. But you reminded me with the left tackle piece. And before I forget, I just want to bring up what we talked about Daniel Falele before the Ravens game. What we talked about Daniel Falele before the NFL draft here, when people were starting to drool over the guy, got proven every bit as true this past weekend against the Patriots. Going up against Daniel Falele for a partial game, Dietrich Wise looked like Reggie frickin' White.
3 sacks.
Yeah, just, ridiculously horrible. And, all I could picture was Falele's big dumb face going, Fulele, oh no, out on the field, like uh, him fast. Like it's ridiculous. Like, and it makes me appreciate Teron Armstead all the more when I watch Daniel Fulele make Austin Jackson look like an all-pro.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when Jackson comes back. And Greg Little also needs to have a big game here against Sam Hubbard, who's a very good defensive end, all-around defensive end type, former third-round pick out of Ohio State. He's more of an edge-setting type of guy. DJ Reader is not going to play in this game, and that's big because he's 6'5", 340, and he was a player that was a big priority for the Bengals and is probably going to be out the next 4 to 8 weeks. So we've gone through a lot here, Paul. And another thing that we haven't talked about is the Dolphins wide receiver position. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, still two of the top players at the position by far in the game, going up against Chidobe Awuzie and Eli Apple. And Tyreek Hill called out Eli Apple. And that is going to be the storyline of the game.
Is it? Is Eli Apple a storyline? He feels like a footnote at this
point. After Tyreek Hill called him out, absolutely. Absolutely.
What is Eli Apple going to do about it?
Eli Apple, to his defense, has not said anything. Tyreek Hill called him out, and he has, of course, a history of talking trash, but most importantly, backing it up.
And let's face it, what is Eli Apple going to actually come out and say here? He's probably right. Like, I mean,
but Apple did a decent job in that game.
The only way Eli Apple can cover Tyreek Hill is if Eli Apple retires and gets a job as a reporter. Like,
it sounded for me more like revenge for Tyreek Hill, and that sounds even better.
For revenge for what? Not getting 200 yards against the guy? Like, whatever. But I mean, in all honesty,
Bengals beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. That's where this stems from, and that's why Tyreek Hill said, "I owe you, boy." I love it, and he comes out and he backs up. Even if he doesn't back it up, he draws double coverage that has Tua looking off the safety and Jalen Waddle going over the top. That's the beauty of not only this offense, but this team. I love it, and I'm so excited.
Well, and it's funny because I just thinking about this, it's almost like Tua doesn't even have to look you off most of the time anymore, except on plays that are truly schemed to go to a specific receiver. Because all he really has to do is drop back and go, all right, who's open? Got you. Like, not even looking off, just like looking through his progressions real quick. Like, all right.
See, I don't agree with that, because he really is looking off players,
and he has when he's needed to, like on that design play to Waddle.
I don't think there are receivers running wide open in this Dolphins offense right now. I think he's actually taking the safety and moving him to a certain spot and then nailing it into a spot. And that's complimentary of Tua. And I've loved to see it.
It depends on the play though, because like there are a few where like the effort play where they lined up in this tight bunch over to the right with Tyreek up by himself on the left. And there was no need to look off. So he didn't even bother. He just looked over, saw Tyreek was one-on-one. And to be fair, even the corner looked, saw he was one-on-one and just watched him go by like, nothing I'm going to do here. And he was 15 yards from anybody by the time Tua threw it 2 seconds into his drop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there are one player that I've seen get open quite a bit underneath is Chase Edmonds. I mean, there are players getting open.
Oh, I didn't know about this cat. Tyreek Hill is pissed because Eli Apple actually sent him Super Bowl tickets.
Oh, wow. That's different.
Tyreek's getting 300 this week.
That's different. I hope so.
And real quick, Gary Godshaw asked, does Buffalo game pose any questions to you on the assumption of dominance we're going with around Waddle and Hill against the rookie secondary, etc.? For me, no, it doesn't pose any questions.
Against a rookie secondary, no, because I think Elam and Benford did a really good job given the circumstances. When the Dolphins face a team that plays man to man, and I think that's the possibility when things could open up. And even if they don't open up, the thing is with Waddle and Hill, and what they can present, it forces defenses to play so far back that it allows Tua to take advantage of his accuracy at that point. So there has to be a solution to what Tua and Hill and Waddle are doing right now in the passing game. And if there's not, it's going to be a magical season for the Dolphins. If another defense exposes a wrinkle with what the Dolphins are doing, that I absolutely think that that's something they have to adjust to throughout the year.
Now, Kat, what are your thoughts on the possibilities of what Mike Gesicki is going to be able to do against this Bengals defense? Because that's one thing I haven't looked at, is how the Bengals defense has done against the tight end.
I haven't looked at that specifically with numbers, but Logan Wilson matches up very well with tight ends, as well as Jesse Bates, the free safety. So I don't expect this to be Mike Gesicki's breakout game at all. I see Mike Gesicki being a counterpart against these weak opponents that the Dolphins are facing over the next 2 months. And one game he's going to have 10 catches for 110 yards when people aren't paying attention to him.
Yeah, no, I can see that scenario. I mean, it's the interesting thing for me as well is if we do see one of our offensive tackles, just going back to a thing you were talking about earlier, one of the thoughts I had that I forgot to mention is if one of our offensive tackles is struggling with one of these defensive ends, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Dolphins commit Alec Ingold to helping a bit on that side. Which,
yeah,
God, love watching Ingold play.
Ingold did not have as good of a game last week, but I saw the talent the game before that, and it was crushing talent. Durham Smythe is also a piece that is always in the conversation. He chip blocks. He gets out into coverage. He may only catch 3 passes for 23 yards like he did last week, but he's blocking for, 40, 45 plays a game, and he's not dropping passes. That's all I can expect out of a tight end / fullback type.
Yeah. I mean, the other factor we haven't talked about a little bit is Jesse Bates playing in that secondary combined with Von Bell is a very good safety tandem.
Yep.
The Bengals do like to play a lot of nickel as well. So we're probably going to see 5 defensive backs in this one a lot, which should enable guys like Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert to potentially have that big game against the Bengals and see a lot of the underneath stuff, trying to pull that secondary forward to be able to hit over the top. Mike McDaniel has shown a great deal this season. He is not afraid to have Tua drop bombs over the top. I know he's one of the top players in the NFL as far as 40+ yard completions as it stands right now.
Yeah, this is going to be a defense that is a top at least 5 to 7 unit in the rest of the year. I mean, when you look at Chidobe Awuzie at one cornerback spot, who I think is one of the most underrated players at the position at cornerback. And then you look at that safety tandem that you talked about, Jesse Bates and Von Bell, Logan Wilson, and also Akeem Davis-Gaither patrolling the inside, a player that's emerging, in my opinion. And then on the defensive end spots, you've got Sam Hubbard and you've got Trey Hendrickson, I mean, that's hard to compete against. I think one of the big things that the Dolphins have to look at what in this matchup offensively is DJ Reader being out,
Yeah.
because BJ Hill is a good player on the inside. Josh Tupie, also a decent backup type in his career, but there's a hole there. DJ Reader is a player that they paid a lot of money to, and he's not going to be there for the next at least the next several weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with really. This is a very good defense, but again, it's with Reader out. I think Miami is going to be able to do a little bit up the middle, which is going to start pulling that Bengals defense forward, and that's when I think Tua is going to eat. And one of the things that I've been very impressed with the Dolphins this season is the halftime adjustments, the way they come out of the tunnel. Because one of the things that they've been famous for over the past decade or so is not making great halftime adjustments. When they were under Flores, you saw it a lot where they didn't come out and make the adjustments at halftime that we expected, and sometimes we saw, sometimes we didn't, but that were needed for this team. And the Dolphins seem to get stronger as the game goes on. So this should be a very interesting matchup as this game goes along. And somebody brought up in chat that the bend but don't break defense. This is a team through 3 games that's gotten it done in multiple facets, whether it's the defense picking it up when the offense was down, whether it was the offense picking it up when the defense was down, whether it was a combined effort type of situation. And that's what you see the great teams do out there. It is when one thing's not working, they pick it up in the other areas. You see these guys doing exactly what Mike McDaniel preaches and playing for each other out there on the field. And that really does help tremendously as far as playing good complementary football goes.
Yeah, and defensively, to that point, I didn't think that there were players, even with Byron Jones out, that could come on this roster and make a legitimate impact on defense, because there were so many players on defense here at the beginning of the year. Agba, Phillips, Wilkins, Sealer, Raekwon Davis, Jerome Baker. I mean, I can name the whole defense, but for Kader Kohu and Melvin Ingram to come on this defense and do what they've done, that adds another wrinkle for the rest of the year, especially when you're going against these quarterbacks who have to prove something for the rest of the year. And up till now, they have not. And there's not a real reason to think that they will. So this defense already feasted on poor quarterbacks. And now after this game on September 29th against Joe Burrow, they're going to be facing a schedule of quarterbacks that is worthy of feasting on. So, Paul, let's give the people what they want. What is your prediction on this game?
Real quick, before I give my prediction, I just want to correct somebody in chat. CJ, you said head-to-head for wild card spot is irrelevant. It comes down to conference record. That is not true. The very first tiebreaker for seeding in the playoffs, whether it's seeding amongst wild cards or seeding amongst the division winners, is head-to-head if it's a 1-to-1 comparison between two teams. So just
I think you might have been talking about the conversation we were having earlier about if the Dolphins were not, if the Bills won the division and it was the Dolphins against the Ravens or the Bengals.
Right. Yeah, but it's the head-to-head for wild card seeding. If there's a tie, the first tiebreaker is head-to-head.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm correcting here is CJ thought it was the conference record.
Okay.
Which does come into play, but the head-to-head comes into play first.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry.
All right. So what's your prediction?
My prediction for this game is I think Miami has a great history against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. And I think that continues here as Miami rolls to 4-0. I feel a little more confident with this than any of my previous predictions. I think Miami pulls this one off 33-17.
Yeah, I look at the matchups and I favor the Dolphins. I look at the situation and I favor the Bengals because I feel they're a team that it's more likely that they're 2-2 than the Dolphins are 3-1, or that than the Dolphins are 4-0. I see it more likely that we're talking after this week about the Bengals being 2-2 and the Dolphins 3-1 than the Dolphins being 4-0 and the Bengals being 1-3 at the same time. But no, I'm done with that. Let's go.
So
Dolphins go 4-1. Dolphins go 4-0 here. Dolphins go 4-0.
I agree with you here. I really do.
And score prediction. Let's go the same score that the Shula Bowl was back in 95. I believe it was 27-23. If it was 26-23, 27-23. OJ McDuffie caught a couple of touchdown passes. I'm going to go 27-23 Dolphins.
Okay. And actually, I want to go back to one thing that you actually just pointed out because it kind of struck me a little bit funny. As excited as I was about Cater Kohu, which I like to remind you and our listeners every chance I get, I do have to admit, and by the way, guys, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. That way you get the notifications when we go live. I know our post game wrap up is going to be Friday. I think we're looking at just because of the late time tomorrow night and some things are going on.
Yep.
As excited as I was and like to pat myself on the back for jumping for joy when they signed Cater Kohu as an undrafted free agent here. Out of Texas A&M School of Commerce.
Texas A&M Commerce.
I was not fully on board with the Melvin Ingram signing. I didn't know what the man had left in the tank at the moment. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I am very happy to say I've been proven wrong, and repeatedly so on a play in play out basis as far as Melvin Ingram goes. He has already several difference making plays in his first 3 weeks with this team. And in reality, as much as I did believe in Cater Kohu, I didn't expect him to have the role already that he does. I didn't expect it from Melvin Ingram either. And without him and what he's done in these games, we may not be 3-0 right now. So hats off to Melvin Ingram for the stellar play that he has had since joining the team. I don't remember seeing him play this good in a while.
Yeah, he hasn't statistically. He's been a good player over the last couple of years with the Chiefs and with the Steelers, just not on a sack total basis. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he was sitting out there until July. There's no doubt about that. And I was kind of about the signing. I was kind of about Trey Flowers as well. And you look at the last play of the game last week, he was playing nose tackle, number 93. And for somebody who signs for 1 year, $2 million, and he plays 12 snaps, one of which is on the final play of the game, that's worth it. That's value. Cater Kohu signing as an undrafted free agent for 1 year, $100,000 is value. And those are the acquisitions that Chris Greer now looks like a star for. And if the Dolphins go to 4-0, I'm telling you, they were 1-3 before these scheduled type of runs in the middle of the season. And you can look at the schedule if you don't believe me. Let's go tomorrow. And that's going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins Bengals matchup here. And by the way, my final score prediction, if you didn't hear it, is 27-23. I already said it. That's going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins Bengals matchup. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, as well as the FinSide Network and finfanatic.com. And you can also, man,
No,
I'm so
just do
excited.
me a favor.
I'm so excited. I
Don't
can't.
say if it's not on the right side and it's not on the right side, it's on the fin side. Don't say
All
that.
right.
That,
All right,
that was
so
the other day.
I've got a, hold on. So let's start over here. 3, 2, 1. All right. If it's not on the right side and it's not on the left